Welcome back to Down the Road. Well, as you know, I've been promoting this all show and anxious to meet him because the story you're about to hear is a story of inspiration. The story you're about to hear is of some people that are making a difference in people's lives that need a difference made in their lives. That's right. Steve Peterson is the founder of Raven Rising. I could tell you what it is because I've done my homework. I've read some of the testimonials. I've seen some of the work that he's done, but it's best described by him. Let's bring him in. Steve, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Joel, it's really nice to see you in person. It's been a long time.
Yeah. So tell me about Raven Rising. Tell me what this is all about.
So you touched on something in the break about Vic, and he actually had some inspiration into this happening.
Tell people who Vic is.
Okay, so Vic Gelking of Vic's Aircraft in North Fargo, he hailed back to Minot, and man, the story on Vic, that could be an entire show by itself. He was a...
That's true. Can I just add that?
Yep, World War II.
Big personality.
World War II Marine that was meant to go into Japan, and right before they were about to ship him out, they dropped the bombs, and we had armistice between us and Japan. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have ever known Vic. The force to be reckoned with, a personality, and one hell of a dancer.
Taught it. Great pilot.
Notorious across North Dakota for his ballroom dancing, and then the flying, of course. I think that Vic, we would have lost him years ago if it wasn't for flying. That was his inspiration after World War II. And that, I'll call him an old man because he is, but he took a lot of time to put me under his wing, to inspire me to do different things, to see the world as a good thing again. I was going through a tough time myself at that point, so anything that I've done for others is a mirror and reflection of what Vic actually did for me in certain aspects. So I just really wanted to pay testimonial to Vic.
Well, what a great thing to do, though. I mean, what a great way to start this conversation, to acknowledge that somebody helped get you to here, to where you're making a difference. And Raven Rising, to me, is an exact example of that. You know, oftentimes we look at a problem, you know, and we say that's their fault, or that's they better get their head screwed on straight, or, you know what, they better clean up their act type thing. And we don't help them to. And so I explain to people what you're doing with Raven Rising.
So a couple of years ago, I was doing some lobbying work at the state capitol during the second to last session and working as a patient advocate. And during that time, I spent the vast majority listening in the Human Services Committee and on the House side and on the Senate side. And because they wouldn't give me a schedule of when my legislation might be discussed, I would have to spend the entire day in there. And fair enough. But because of that, I got to hear a lot of concerns from people across the state of North Dakota, a lot of people out of the human services realm, from EMS to law enforcement to counselors, and they're all looking for the state to find new ways or more ways to help them. And that you can't sit there as a conscientious human and listen to all this without it impacting you. And me being the way I am, I'm trying to find a solution for problems. And some of the core issues I really saw was youth diversion. That if we can get into being able to provide more youth diversion with the proper mentorship in central North Dakota specifically, which is why I drove in from Mandan today, that we could probably even reduce crime rates here in this state.
So what's youth diversion? Describe that.
Well, so youth diversion can take many different forms. Many years ago, I was associated with the Boy Scouts of America. And with that, we, through the COPE program, which we are mirroring as what I want to develop for North Dakota through Raven Rising, the long-term intent, is really showing them alternatives. Being able to explain to certain young people that where you're at in the moment is just where you're at in the moment. Set your sight to a better North Star. You'll get there. Christopher, as we discussed during the break, perfect example of someone who picked a North Star, stuck to it, and right now is at jet training for SkyWest down in Texas. He just flew out a couple of days ago from Chicago. The last thing he did, I don't remember if you remember that Texan T6 that used to sit in front of Vic's hangar. That's how Christopher and I met the first time. He was looking at it through the chain link fence, and I said, "You're interested?" He explained to me he was doing his early private pilot work at a small Cherokee. So I let him in through Vic's office, and we stood there and talked for a while, became friends with him, and I treat him more like my stepson than I do anything else. But helping him maintain his North Star to where he's at is very important, and the results, the fact that he just debuted at the Met in the last year and being one of the first black baritones to be in an all-black opera at the Metropolitan in New York, for a young man from Hawley, that's a heck of a step forward in life.
As somebody who met him and didn't know that that is what he's rose to, I mean, that's astounding. As somebody who went to Vic's for years and saw the job that you guys did, I mean, who would have connected those dots? But get ready to blush. Are you ready? In the bio that I saw, it says, what positive takeaways do apply to your life after working with you? Okay. Stephen's guidance has been applied to nearly every aspect of my personal and professional life. Through his guidance, I've learned to manage my finance, goals, and business acumen. Now, what would you say to someone? There's another question that went to him. What would you say to someone considering looking to participate in Raven Rising event? To all those who wish to participate in any Raven Rising events, they will be provided with some true, valuable networking and mentorship. He goes on, but the fact of the matter is you made a difference in his life. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. This young man is succeeding at this game of life because you brought him through that chain link fence and you took him through Vic's office. And you've turned that into, for lack of a better way of putting it, Steve, into a calling.
And I see that you have a picture of Brandon right underneath there too. And we can touch on him. Brandon is more an advisor to me, which I wanted to touch on that before I addressed Chris. Christopher, if people knew his entire story, and that's for him to speak to and for him to tell, that he's had adversity in his life. He's come from having lost his adopted father and, a lot of hurdles that would put most people down on their knees. But he's been very good about maintaining that North Star. As a matter of fact, I'll randomly get a phone call still to this day. If I don't hear from him at least a couple of times a month, I get worried. Yeah. But Christopher and I, it's really about being a mirror to what he wants to accomplish. When he calls me, he typically brings me A-B scenarios or A-B-C scenarios, and we war game them out. And typically what I do is I actually just parrot back to him what he says. Let him hear what his actual feelings are. And that's one of the key things with the type of mentorship that we did through the Boy Scouts, was that in the COPE program, as we're dealing with children struggling through, whether it be the high course or working on some of the team building elements on the low course, that it was helping them learn how to coordinate. It wasn't me as a COPE director telling them what to do. That's no fun for me. Mm-hmm. I preferred it when the young people took the initiative to try to problem solve and then figure out how to work together. And it's interesting what happens in time when you peel away the personality, the ego, the id, and you get right down to what a person's real emotional center is and what matters to them. Yeah. And Christopher, there's two things top of mind that matter to him. And jokingly, I will start saying it's flying and opera. But
the two to go together, that's just astounding to me. And how you can make that jump. Tell me about the development. Tell me what you're doing with the website.
So I chose a group. I forgive me for stumbling there for a second. There's a lot to unpack in that. Mm-hmm. Ravenrising.com is an iteration of mine that I've been working on for a period of time. And I partnered with Spotlight Media from here in Fargo. I wanted to make sure I picked a North Dakota organization to help me build out what my digital footprint.
You picked well.
They have won awards for some of the work that they've done. I wish that more people would come to ravenrising.com to take a look at the products that we have to offer. But the long-term iteration of the ravenrising.com website is to use my profit margins to develop the Challenging Outdoor Personal Experience, the COPE program, that we're taking basically from the BSA. And I want to co-teach that with different groups like YouthWorks out in Mandan and Bismarck and up in Minot. So that way we're able to get those young people that we were talking about for diversion into different mentorships. However, the hybrid version of what I want to do is that I'm going to take their therapy staff. We train them up to at least a level 1 certification within the ropes course, and then they maintain the verbal communication, the word track with their patients, their children, and also some adults also. So that way there's continuity of care. It's my way of looking at it. Then at that point, my staff would be safety and support.
Okay.
But the website drives everything. If we're able to have enough people come and visit the website, participate in some of the equipment sales that we have, that helps us break ground that much sooner to build my magnus opum, rather, for a PTSD treatment and therapy center in the center of North Dakota.
Okay. I have to tell you, I was glad to hear you say YouthWorks, and for some obvious reasons.
Well, and I have no permission to mention them today, so they're probably caught off guard.
Let me.
Please.
The manager of YouthWorks is a woman named Melanie Heitkamp, my sister. So there, I'm very proud of what YouthWorks does, and there is a need of what you're describing. And so I'm glad to hear you recognize where individuals are that need your help. You've mentioned COPE a number of times. Describe to people what COPE is.
So back in, I'm going to pick on somebody later, or I'll be picked on by them.
Pick on me. Everybody does.
Sure.
One more time.
So in the late 70s and early 80s, the Challenging Outdoor Personal Experience program, the COPE program, was released and developed within the Boy Scouts of America. And it's a team building group program where we take up to 12 individuals and we give them different tasks or challenges to accomplish. And they're only given each other as tools to do this. So that causes them to learn how to negotiate, how to either rise to the top as a director of an idea, or sometimes to listen and be the one that executes the activity. So it's a lot of interpersonal activities between the participants, and we can use different things where we have a large balancing table. And you get 12 individuals up on this balancing table, and you challenge them with all 4 sides have to be off the ground. Well, now you have to have 12 people individually move themselves around and communicate properly without yelling, without degrading each other, in team fashion, of how to all equalize each other so that they find balance. And that's kind of the overall emphasis of COPE, is to teach people that if you learn how to properly communicate what you need, you can accomplish the task ahead of you. And some of the tasks that we put ahead of them are as simple as getting everyone across a boundary of ropes, and they can only use different holes within that spider web to get each team participant through. And if they fail, they have to do it again. They don't get to give up. There's no quitting. Now, let me emphasize challenge by choice with that. That if they find a challenge to where they're not comfortable with, and that's why they're not doing it, as long as they're able to verbalize that, we let them step aside, whether as a team or as an individual. But a lot of this is to put people up to challenges they've never experienced before. You've worked in small groups before, on committees, and you know how difficult it is sometimes to get past a person's personality, to get down to the actual nitty-gritty of the statute or the wording that you're working on as a group to affect change. And sometimes it's learning how to properly just tap them on the knee and say, hey, I appreciate your emotions. I appreciate where you're coming from. And I'm not disagreeing with you. We agree. However, how can we get this to effect? So I don't believe in putting things to committee for 20 years, and that's a jab at the Minot containering station there. But really, ultimately, it's helping people communicate their feelings properly, especially when we get them 30 plus feet off the ground on the high ropes course, that we encourage them to push themselves to the limit. There's at no point in the nature of how the high ropes course are set up, I can't go out there and affect physical change upon them unless they completely quit. Then at that point, we just lower them to the ground via the rope systems that we have. But until that point, until they quit on themselves, we just encourage them. Come on, you can do this. And having those people to encourage them, that's basically what I've been doing with Chris via telephone and such for years now, is he calls me when he's going through a challenge. He has questions about things, and I remind him, what is this future iteration that you want, Christopher? And the same thing that we do with the kids. And a lot of the therapy programs of YouthWorks, that's what they're already doing with them. We're just changing the environment, sometimes changing the elevation of where the conversation happens. Because when certain endorphins are firing in the mind, certain lessons become impregnated there. And when you fall into other challenges, they're the first ones that they hear. So if the young Heitkamp has been giving good information to people, which I'm sure that she has, that when they find that challenge, that they hear her voice in the back of their mind being that guiding light, that North Star of, I've got this, breathe, relax, do the right thing.
So the Boy Scouts really, I mean, that's 3 or 4 times you mentioned them. And of course, both you and I know what a great organization they are, but they really made a difference in your life, didn't they?
That right there we could unpack a novel out of. But scouting was something that my family, my father specifically, pointed me and pushed me into. And it made such an impact on my life, especially when I was working as a bounty hunter, that I would take as often as possible 3 months off each summer to go teach and mentor. And at some points that was me working as a canoe guide. There was, I believe, one time where you, or at least your sister, was out at the camp visiting another one of your family members. And at that time, the trips that we were doing was 5-day trips up to, or 4-day trips out on the rivers of the Crow Wing, Mississippi, and the Big Fork up in northern Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And it was teaching by example of, this is what our mission is. We're going to keep this simple. We're going to accomplish this. You're going to have all kinds of feelings on this trip. It's going to get cold. You're going to get rained on. It might even snow. It's northern Minnesota. And helping the kids do that over the summer was a base point for me, so that when my 3 months ended, that I could go back to bounty hunting and then pursue those people and understand why I did.
How do you gauge success? Because not everyone is going to end up going to be a pilot and sing at the Met.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously a great example you can show of what you can do with your dreams, but how do you gauge success?
Wow, that's a slide ruler all day long, because every time you find success, it opens up the next door to the next challenge. And I think that's probably one of the misnomers of success that a lot of people have, that's an arrival to a point and then you're done. That people need to stop looking at success that way. Success is just opening the door, literally getting the key to go to the next journey of your life, to step to the next point, kind of like Christopher learning how to fly big jets. It's just another doorway that he passes through, so that when he goes back to the Met, because he's maintained that contract, then when he steps on stage, that he knows, again, he's just turning the key on another door to move forward. So success is yes, linear, but it doesn't end when you reach a certain point. Achievement is dangerous like that. Just because each time you succeed, it means you have to do more.
I told you folks, this was going to be one of those conversations that's going to make a difference and you're going to remember. Let's do it again, though.